buried in silence, the forgotten rebellion that shook the British Empire. It began in a prison, a place built to crush spirit, to erase memory. But within its walls, an uprising was born, one so dangerous, so meticulously planned, that the British Empire tried to erase every trace of it. For over a century they succeeded, until now. This is the forgotten story of the Andaman Island Revolt of 1859, a rebellion that almost changed colonial history, buried in the silence of the sea. The year is 1857. India burns. Sepoys, Indian soldiers under British command, rise in a brutal mutiny. Cities fall, armies clash, British control trembles. But when the rebellion is crushed, the empire seeks revenge. Swift, merciless, absolute. Thousands are executed, and hundreds more are shipped across the sea to a remote, hellish speck of land in the Bay of Bengal, the Andaman Islands. Here, far from India's shores, the British construct a penal colony, a prison without escape, a purgatory for the so-called traitors of 1857. It was meant to be the end, but it became a beginning. The men sent there were not ordinary criminals. They were revolutionaries, thinkers, soldiers, farmers, men who had once defied the most powerful empire on earth. Now they were thrown into a living nightmare. The Andamans were not a home. They were a death sentence. Dense jungle, sweltering heat, and a brutal commandant named Major James Walker. Prisoners were forced to clear forest by hand. Chained together, beaten daily, starved, diseased, dehumanized. They were not allowed to speak their language. They were banned from prayer. They were numbers, not names. But inside this torture, resistance began to breathe again. They planned in whispers. Late at night, when guards dozed off, messages were scratched into tree bark. Plans drawn in the sand, erased by sunrise. They watched the tides. They studied the guards' routines. They waited. And waited, and then came April 1859. A group of prisoners, mostly ex-soldiers of the 1857 revolt, launched their plan. They overpowered the sentries with handmade weapons, knives carved from coconut shells, clubs made of driftwood, a few pistols smuggled or stolen. They seized the colony's armory, raised the stolen British flag upside down, and took command of the entire facility. For 3 full days, the Andaman Penal Colony was in Indian hands, a spark of freedom in the darkest place on earth. But the British response was swift. A naval warship, HMS Pluto, arrived without warning. The jungle was shelled. The colony stormed. Many rebels escaped into the dense wilderness. Some attempted to build rafts, to return to the Indian mainland. Most were never seen again. Some say they were eaten by crocodiles. Others believe they were hunted down and executed in secret, but a few survived. Native Andamanese tribes claimed to have seen them, wandering warriors who spoke of a prison revolt long before the world knew of it. The British buried the event. No mention in colonial reports, no trials, no public hangings. Too risky. Only coded memos in the East India archives, vague references to disturbances resolved. The world forgot. But memory is hard to kill. Over 100 years later, fragments surfaced. An old letter written by a jailer's assistant. A tribal folk tale passed down for generations. A ruined watchtower covered in moss. Bullet holes still visible in the stone. Historians piece together the revolt like shards of a broken mirror, each piece more haunting than the last. This wasn't just an escape attempt. It was a second rebellion, a message to the empire. You can chain our bodies, but not our will. The Andaman Island Revolt didn't change the course of empire, but it revealed its deepest fear. Not armed resistance, but organized hope. It showed that even in exile, the dream of freedom could not be extinguished. That in the heart of darkness, fire still burns. And in a world obsessed with power, it was powerless men who reminded us what courage truly looks like. Not with guns, not with glory, but with the audacity to believe that justice could rise from the depths of a prison island. That silence could be broken. That memory could one day be louder than fear. The Andaman Revolt of 1859 was never taught in textbooks, but today it becomes history once more. Not because it won, but because it dared, and that may be the greatest victory of all.